Good morning, More Than Commas community, and welcome to The Tilt, everyone. I have some great things to share with you today, picking up a little bit on what we talked about on Friday, although I think Marla got it up on Monday. There was not much Wi-Fi out where I was at this camp. But what I'm going to talk about today is something from a group called Bridgepoint Forum. Now, they're an organization that really helps Christians take their faith on Sunday and have it be an embedded part of their work, their relationship with God, and the way they operate in the marketplace every day, so that it's not just church on Sunday, if you will. And while I'm going to be talking about some things that certainly relate to biblical faith, I think regardless of your faith journey, this is going to be something helpful that you'll be able to take something away. But I want to give a big shout out to John and Jonathan Sharp over at Bridgepoint, and especially to Jeff Rogers, who has really, if you're in the Seattle community, you may know him, but he has really done a great job of embodying a bunch of these practices and philosophies that Bridgepoint teaches in their Bridgepoint Forum curriculum. So if I misquote something or get something wrong about the philosophy, John, Jeff, Jonathan, feel free to correct me either right here in public or privately. But my understanding of the philosophy of Bridgepoint so far is this idea that God created everything we see, hear, touch, smell. And it's God's wishes for this world that he created to be brought more fully under his will. And he does that with his followers having the responsibility of both people and things. And that to build that responsibility, what's required is this, we have to struggle. Like, struggles are the dumbbell that build the muscle of responsibility that we need for God to entrust us with responsibility over more people and more things. And if you think about it, it's really a model that God put right on our hearts, with this idea that, when we're growing our children, what do we constantly do? Give them a little more responsibility, and intentionally do so until the responsibility gives out and they fail, and we correct them and train them so that they can be responsible for more things. And it's very much like our Father in heaven. But it is, it kind of can escape us. So when I recorded Friday, I was actually headed up to a trail life camp. I'm the troop master of the troop, and we had 81 men and boys at this camp. And one of the things that we talked about at the camp was this idea of doing hard things, and getting through those hard things really has rewards. And one thing for sure is that there's this timeless truth that says anything worth achieving is going to be hard to achieve. But as a bit of a side note there, just because it's hard doesn't mean it's worthy. There are lots of us who have wasted tremendous energy and time doing dumb things, pursuing dumb things, and it was really hard. So because it's hard doesn't mean that's a good idea. It just means it's hard. But if we do hard, worthy things, there is a benefit. So as I was teaching these boys about the benefits of discipline, and discipline is one of the hardest things to do, because discipline's actually easier when it's inflicted on you. When your parents discipline you, it's like somebody's throwing up the guardrails and saying this is how to do it and how not to do it. To discipline yourself is even more difficult, and that's what we were talking about. But there's this Bible verse, Hebrews 12:11, and it says, "No discipline is pleasant at the time, but painful. However, later on, it produces a harvest of peace and righteousness for those who have been trained by it." And what I shared with the dads and boys is this idea that today, now a couple thousand years later, we have brain scanning technology, and we found that when people have to build a new discipline, get exposed to new information, like learning, etc., the part of your brain that lights up is what's called the anterior cingulate cortex. And that's your pain center. And so your pain center lights up when you're learning new things or holding new disciplines. It's hard to get through. And yet when you get through it, what happens? The nucleus accumbens activates as our reward center and begins making us feel good. That's what people relate to as, say, the runner's high. But it's also the thing that happens anytime we press through something difficult long enough to see an improvement. That's what our brain needs. That nucleus accumbens is looking for progress, which could be building a skill, better understanding a text, going and being around an organization long enough to go from being a stranger to having relationships. And that reward center produces the dopamine release, etc., and gives us this incredible automatic training mechanism that is built into our DNA, that we will have things that are difficult, but all we have to do is press through the difficulty and our body rewards us. Now, one thing that can be very difficult in parenting, certainly, is you can shortcut that. Right? You can have an upset kid that's bothered that they didn't do well at whatever the sport was, or they didn't do good on the test, etc. And we can sit down with them and say, well, I'm sorry you had a bad day. Let's get you a bowl of ice cream. Or let's, I know you didn't do the thing you intended to do, but we'll get a treat after this if you just behave. And what you have to be careful there about is you can be shortcutting and therefore short-circuiting this very mechanism. Now, I'm not here on the tilt talking to you guys about your parenting. What I'm using that as an example so we see it in another person, because we do that to ourselves. If you have a bad day and have a drink, that could be a problem. If that's the solution. I have a history of alcoholism in my family. And so I made a commitment years ago that I would never drink to feel better. That I only do it, and I've certainly drank to excess. I'm no angel, but I've never done it while upset. So that now I didn't know about the brain science when I was in my early 20s, but what I did know is that everybody I knew had a drinking problem had started as medication or treatment for how they felt. So here's kind of a quick review. We have the Bible telling us over 2,000 years ago that we now know from brain science is real. We have the obvious seen evidence of our lived experience in our lives every day that people who build discipline in their lives actually have a harvest of peace and righteousness. Now, when I say a harvest of peace and righteousness, I thought it was funny that the Bible doesn't say a life of peace and righteousness, just a harvest, to show that it's just more than you would have had otherwise. It's not a solution and makes your life easy. It simply puts you in a position that you can now have more peace and righteousness because you have discipline than you would if you didn't have discipline. Very, very easy. Wow, guys, I've got to have Marla turn on. I should have let it keep going. Hopefully Marla can turn around the camera. To record this, I just want a quiet place, so I had my Cybertruck take me to the boat dock, and it dang near drove me into the water. So, now I lost my nerve and hit the brakes, so I'm just going to back up here real quick. I just hit the brakes. I'm not really turning the wheel. I'm just backing straight up, about to where I put on the FSD. If it drives me in the lake, I'm going to let it. I'll let it get up to the front axles. Hopefully that doesn't damage anything if it does. I've got my home in here. I'm back in drive and go. Now it wants me to maybe touch the gas. Well, it didn't try to drive me in the lake this time, so maybe Marla can get in there and turn that footage around. Ah, guys, I'm so sorry I didn't let it drive me in the lake. That would have been a great, fun, shared experience for us. Maybe next time we'll try again tomorrow. Well, let's get back to our topic. So, we know that people that build disciplines have lives that are more peaceful and oftentimes even more successful than they would be otherwise. We know that if we shortcut that process, we can put ourselves in a position where when things get difficult, instead of pressing through the difficulty to get the reward, we will reach for the shopping trip, the vacation, the insert risky behavior or unhealthy behavior here. We do those things to get our dopamine release from the difficulty of our pain center rather than getting our dopamine from progressing in life. And then, there's Romans 5:3-5 that we tell our Trail Life boys all the time, which is rejoice in your suffering because suffering produces perseverance, character, and character, hope. It goes on to say to hope in the Holy Spirit and the gift of eternal life. But the lesson I would have everybody take away is if we can go through those difficulties, looking forward to our reward center lighting up later and seeing progress in our lives as a result of getting through the difficulty, and we stay anchored in that, it allows us to traverse difficulty with joy. And if we can traverse difficulty with joy, that actually gives hope to other people that watch us go through it. Because when you go through difficulty and you just grit and grind and tough through it, that'll be impressive to people. It'll inspire some people. But it also creates a question for some where they'll ask themselves, I don't know if I could do what you did. But I will tell you, when you can go through the harshest of life's fires with joy, and you have seen it, you've watched people, you've been with other people talking about someone who's going through something difficult with joy, and it inspires others. And so, I guess what I'm telling you today is tilt into your suffering today, tilt into the difficulty, because all of that difficulty, all of that discipline that you need to build, etc., is just part of this school that God has us in, of us building our responsibility and Him wanting to bring more of His people and His things under your stewardship. And I just want to finish today with a great little quote from Right Thing Right Now and Ryan Holiday and why we do a lot of these things, why we help grow others, why we want to grow ourselves, is fundamentally we're going from being dependent when we learn a new skill, learn a new job, be in a new relationship, to being dependable. And that a lot of this life is a journey about being a more dependable spouse, friend, business owner, professional to all the people around us. And what we can do is look at that next struggle or difficulty and tilt into it to say, man, I can't wait and see what I'm going to learn from this, what I'm going to come out on the other side with. And if you went through each difficulty saying to yourself, how am I looking for this to build me as a person in my responsibility? And if you anchor in on that, it'll make any of those difficulties easier to traverse. So with that, I hope you guys enjoyed today's tilt. Tomorrow, I promise I'll take another try of getting it to drive into the lake. I think it's because the lake, the boat ramp actually has lines on it, like a lane. So what I'm going to do is the same thing I did today, run right down to the boat ramp, and I will switch it to home the same way I did before. And we got this 360 cam. Tune in tomorrow. With that, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Tilt into your day. Get away from that short attention span stuff and get out there and have a great life. See you back here tomorrow.